I was so nearly born an American. I came that close. In the 1950s, my father was offered a job at Princeton University and he turned it down. And so I was born not in NJ, but in NW3. And I was born a Stephen, not a Steve. But ever since I found this out at a later age, I've been intensely curious to discover more about the world of my other self, this strange American, Steve.
I like to be in America, okay by me in America, everything free in America,
for a small fee in America.
Buying on credit is so nice.
One like a us and they charge twice.
I have my own washing machine.
What will you have though to keep clean?
My favorite room in America, Cadillac Zoom in America, industry food in America,
Terminal room in America.
Over the next months, I and a trusty London cab, albeit one hired in the US, will be visiting each and every one of the 50 of the United States of America to explore the continent that I came so close to calling home. In this episode, I shall be travelling through the heart of the region called New England, before heading south to New York City and thence to New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and on to Washington, D.C. and Pennsylvania. The first state on my journey is Maine, and I'm at the very easternmost tip of the USA in the town of Eastport. This is the lobster capital of the world, and I'm out on the water with the McPhail family, who've been harvesting the bottom of the sea for 3 generations.
So what do I do?
Make a pocket, big handfuls, get it nice and tight, cinch it up.
Okay.
But you gotta make sure it stays closed, so
Right,
the crabs don't pick the bait out. Nice
so
and tight so they pick through here.
I see.
What would you say is the view most Americans have of the state of Maine?
Pine trees.
Pine trees? Moose? Someone told me.
Moose.
The animal, not the pudding.
A lot of people think of lobsters, but they don't realize how much work goes into it.
Maine lobster, of course, yeah.
Right.
3 out of 4 lobsters sold in America are Maine lobsters.
That's what they say.
Let them bite you if you have to.
What about the people? What would they say is the characteristic of someone from Maine? What do you call yourselves? Manians? Maniacs?
Easy now.
I've been called worse.
What is the word? Is there an official word?
Oh, hard workers, I guess.
Is that generally the view people have of Maine people?
I've worked away from here, and as soon as you mention you're from Maine, they'll hire you on the spot, and there ain't no job application, no nothing.
Really?
That's a pretty good characteristic to have, I guess.
Superb. These hardy New Englanders are mainly of Scottish and Irish descent and have in spades that strong Puritan work ethic which has shaped so much of this country. Oh no, I've broken this one.
That's coming out of your pay.
So how old would you reckon that sort of size?
This lobster?
Yeah.
I'd say it's probably 10, 12 years old.
Really? How much would you sell that for?
That's probably worth $20, $25.
$25.
Boat price.
Then by the time it got to restaurant...
That's probably $60, $70.
Yeah. It's not a fair world, is it? The farmer, the fisherman...
We do all the work.
Absolutely.
The hardest part. I shouldn't say all the work. We do the hardest part.
You said hardest part. Now that's a bit like Boston, isn't it? It sounds almost Australian, hardest, or it's really, really unusual. Back in Eastport, and the morning's catch is unloaded at Bob Del Papa's Chowder House. Angus McPhail, lobster patriarch, has been lobstering all his life and knows a thing or two about these snappy insects of the deep. When you say put to sleep, what does that mean exactly? How can you...
Well, just kind of, what we usually play with them, kind of, start it out, kind of put some claws down,
Yeah.
rub the back, kind of puts them paralyzed, like.
So it's now in a trance. Can I try that?
No.
Because they're definitely awake, aren't they?
Oh yeah, they're alive.
I mean, that's... Whoa!
Quite
See, look, he's
lively.
flapping away. So, hang on, we put him down like this. Claws in a position. Is that right?
Yeah, just kind of.
Look at that! Here we go. It's gone. I feel a bit cruel, but on the other hand, yay. They're transformed, aren't they? That's so different from the little brown speckly thing you pull out of the ocean. It's amazing.
It's a lobster bib. You put it over your head. Oh, yeah, tie it around your back. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my.
Maine people don't do that.
Oh, great. Thank you. So suddenly I'm the only one with one.
Where did this taxi cab come from? Did you have trouble?
The thing is, Bob, in London, I actually drive a taxi around. I'm not a
Oh,
taxi driver.
Oh, I was going to say, is that your profession?
No.
Taxi cab. Oh,
No, many
okay, I
people
was
think it
just
should be,
checking
but,
that.
but it's just a very useful way of getting around the city. So I leave Eastport and head south, then west towards New Hampshire, my second state. New Hampshire is well known for its role in the US presidential primaries. Over the grueling months of these preliminary elections, all the presidential hopefuls trek to every corner of this small state, each trying to convince the suddenly important New Hampshireites that they have what it takes to be chosen to lead their party in the race to be the most powerful person on earth.
Oh, fabulous.
Or leader of the free world, as Americans prefer to put it.
Here are Red Sox fans. All right. Good night. How many are also Yankees fans?
How many of these kind of things does he do a day?
It depends on the schedule, but today we have like 2 major events, and then we have a house party, which is our next event.
House party?
Yeah, so it's a little smaller, more informal.
Intimate, and
yeah.
he meets more people, actually shakes their hands.
Yeah, but normally we can have like even 5 in a day.
Yeah, and you've no idea what kind of people will be or what the questions will be.
No, he just takes them as they come
We
in.
had that school in Maine that recently is allowing birth control for a middle school. It's unbelievable.
Well, there's no question in my view that one of the ways that you help instill, if you will, family values is by having the White House be a place that demonstrates family values.
Sure, yeah, hi again.
Stephen Fry, I'm from the BBC.
Nice to see you again, yes.
Your lovely Deirdre
I
has
think
been
we're
very kind to us.
doing which way?
Which way are we aiming? Right here? Who's got the camera? There we go.
For me, the moral line that I would not cross, and we had this in Massachusetts, which is what would we make legal?
Well, there you are. Politics on the stump. It's rather marvellous. It's very American. It's a mixture of Halloween and clapboard houses and sort of hokey politics, but it's rather splendid. I don't think we have anything like this in Britain, and I have to say, one can only approve. I don't think he knew any of the questions were coming, and yes, it's the house of a supporter, but he seemed to answer them very well. I'm more interested in the process, though. It wouldn't really matter whether he's a Democrat or a Republican. It's the style, and I find it very likable, very amiable, very American in that sense. It's casual, and I think all Americans have a sense of great connection and pride about their democratic beginnings and their sense of being involved in the democratic process. And that's something we could learn in Britain.
A 100 miles north, in the White Mountains of New Hampshire that straddle the border with Canada, the Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods, built in 1902, has an illustrious past.
I'd heard of Bretton Woods, but was not really sure what it was. Well, it's this place. It was an international conference held here in 1944 that set up the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, tied world currencies to the dollar, set up the gold standard at $35 an ounce. Everything our prosperity depends on really started here, because for the first time in history, instead of destroying the enemy, we set up conditions to rebuild. And that's why Germany prospered in the 50s, and that's why we all prospered too.
The Bretton Woods Agreement and all that it stood for is an enduring monument to American enlightened self-interest at a time when the US was at the peak of its power at the end of World War II. If only it were that simple these days.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
My name is Mike. I'm going to be your brakeman today. Back in the cab, we have Joe and Pete. They're going to be our engineer and our fireman.
On the world's first and still the greatest cog railway, heading all the way to the top of the highest peak in the northeast of America, Mount Washington. It's an exhilarating ride on a dizzying gradient. When was this line built?
The line was built established in 1869. They actually started working on it in 1866. It took 3 years and 100 men to build the original set of tracks.
And the amount of fuel that you use for one of these journeys, how much coal?
We use a ton of coal.
Really?
Much more efficient than previous trains when the original trains were actually wood trains.
And how much water does it take?
It takes about 1,000 gallons. Just from the base to here, we're going to burn about 300 gallons.
Was it built for any purpose other than tourism?
Nope, solely for tourism.
Right.
Yep, they used to have a hotel at the top.
A hotel at the top of the mountain?
Yep.
Mount Washington, or Agiakuchuk, in the Native American language, meaning home of the Great Spirit, is the windiest place on the planet. That's official. 231 miles per hour recorded on April the 12th, 1934. But luckily, not today.
I'm on the summit of Mount Washington, 6,300 feet up. And around me, all of New England lies. There's New York State, Connecticut, Maine and Vermont. And we're right in the middle, of course, well, the top half of New Hampshire.
Vermont, literally green mountain, Vermont from the French who initially colonized this land, is very green, very wet, and very milky. 500,000 cows worth, and from that milk comes something that is as American as apple pie, yet at the very cutting edge of culinary science. 30 years ago, two hippies called Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield started making ice cream here in Vermont. Ben and Jerry's phenomenal success is built on continuously experimenting with unusual new flavors and names. So let's see what I can do.
Now we're going to start off with our base here. We've got some vanilla ice cream because we understand you're a vanilla fan.
I do love vanilla, real vanilla.
And
yeah.
it is a perfect base really for any inclusions that you put in, any of the pieces and chunks. So we've got a nice variety here for you to choose from between nuts, cookie pieces.
That's what I think of as a very Ben and Jerry's thing, is that you have real pieces, not just little bits.
We like big hunks
so
in
I'm going
chocolate.
to put, can I just put these in?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say dump a good number of them. We'll have you stir that around in there.
Yeah. Walnuts, I think, is...
Something a little more of your palate would be great.
Yeah, I think walnuts.
Stir those in there.
A touch of sophistication.
I think that's what you're bringing to this. Part of the Ben & Jerry's motif is we also have to come up with a good name. A catchy name is going to help a flavor greatly. So
right.
I was thinking possibly we could either go with Even Steven and, and maybe do a little, like a blend of flavors down the side.
I tell you what, though, it's quite cold.
Yeah, that's how we make it. One last one, and then we can do some of the true test, which is actually going to be eating the product.
Wow.
So squeeze together in there.
Oh. Well, you were going to win it, didn't you?
Pretty good. All right, fresh samples today, folks. This is going to be a real treat.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been mixing, and I've mixed my own unique flavor, which we're calling Even Steven. And I'd like to know what you think. I think it's good. I think it's not too sweet, but it delivers. Anxious to know your opinion. Very good. With walnuts. Walnuts might be the very crunchy. The top is chewy. I wanted a chewiness and a crunchiness and a yielding mouthfeel. I'm making these words up as I go along, but they sound reasonably professional to me. That feeling of comfort you get. And ice cream delivers that in a hard and harsh and unpleasant world. We need ice cream. That's my feeling. And so we say farewell, Vermont, state of Ben and land of Jerry. And we say, hail, New York. But not New York City, not the New York of Manhattan and Broadway. This is New York State, a vast land dominated by the Adirondack chain of mountains with Niagara at the top. They say it's the size of England.
The Adirondack Mountains were the first playground of the super wealthy of that Gilded Age back at the beginning of the 20th century. The Rockefellers and Vanderbilts built their so-called great camps in the cool hills to escape the humid cities where they'd made their millions. But it was camping in a style and opulence never seen before or since. This is Topridge, built originally by breakfast cereal heiress Marjorie Merriweather Post, and now owned by a rich Texan family, though it's Lawrence Lester, the long-serving caretaker, who opens up the house for me. And for how many weeks of the year would the family be here?
About 8 weeks.
8 weeks?
8 weeks each year.
Oh. Gosh. Is that something? Some sort of animal skin, isn't it? That rather beats the headdress I had when I was a little boy. Crikey, that's a staircase. What I love about this is most rich Americans try and build houses that look European, like chateau or English castles, but this is 100% American. Everything about it is American. There's skins and antlers. Everything's made of sort of, it's cabin, but it's cabin as reinterpreted by someone with all the money in the world, really. But it's not only the elite rich who come to the Adirondacks. Plenty of blue-collar workers come here to pursue their love of the great American outdoors, an outdoors that teems with game. There's a hunting season for practically everything here. Bear, moose, squirrel, otter, beaver, porcupine, great cat and small cat, weasel and wolverine. You name it, they shoot it or trap it. Right now, it's white-tailed deer season.
Here we've got some fresh deer nuggets, deer poo. And what we do with that occasionally is we'll rub that on our clothing, get it all over us so we smell like the deer. Occasionally we'll roll in the leaves. You want to get rid of your human scent as much as possible.
What does it actually smell like? You can smell
deer poo. Yeah.
That's there's worse poo than that, but it's still poo, isn't it?
Like my clothes and that, I don't wash till the end of season. Change my underwear once or twice.
You do? Well, that's,
a couple times.
Yeah. How does your wife respond to you smelling like
My
that?
ex-wife does not respond anymore.
What's the plan, Bill?
Well, we're going to come up here. We're going to separate. We're going to get a couple watchers over here to the right. I'm going to wait just a couple minutes, let you guys get up in there. Right. So they're bedded right now, and we're going to jump them right out of their nice warm bed.
You wouldn't mind if I said to you, shall we shoot the deer in the sense of with a camera rather than with a gun?
We could do that.
We can let them go. Because I'm a hypocrite, 'cause I do eat meat, but I'm afraid I don't think I could bear the sight of a deer being killed. It's pathetic,
we can
isn't
do
it?
that. They call this the green side of the Big Apple.
Right, that's very good.
That's what they call us.
Not the rotten core.
Yeah, and people in New York City don't even know this is here.
No. And the wind will make a difference, because if the wind was blowing behind us, they would smell us and avoid...
Deer are always going to run into the wind.
Oh, is that right?
They'd rather smell what's ahead of them and know what's out there and look behind them to see what's following them, if something's following them. But they'll always go into the wind.
Yeah.
Do I see it? Just now. I had the crosshairs on it. If I would have been 50 yards lower, it would have had to come this way. Did you see me up on the hill at any point?
No.
And I look and I go, look at that. There goes the tail. Right by Malarney's Rock.
Instead of driving straight down to New York City, I'm heading back to the coast and into the state of Massachusetts, the town most people associate with the War of Independence.
Well, here's the city of Boston, regarded by many Americans as the cradle of the revolution. By revolution, they mean the independence wars, in which they fought us, the British, for the right to govern themselves. And it all came to a head here, actually. We're on the very bridge where the harbour was, where a famous tea party took place. What it actually was all about was money, as so many things are. The colonists, as they were known, the Americans, were fed up with paying taxes to a parliament that didn't actually represent them. There were no American MPs, and yet they had to pay taxes. And so their cry was no taxation without representation. And things came to a head when the British put an extra tax on tea. So when a ship arrived with this tea, they dressed up as what were then called Red Indians, Native American tribesmen, and dumped the whole lot into the harbour, worth what would now be hundreds of thousands of pounds, if not millions of pounds, was one of the sparks that lit the tinder of the whole revolution.
How fitting, then, that I'm dropping in on a tea party at one of the country's most famous institutions, Harvard University. My host is Harvard's pastor and professor of divinity, Peter Gomes, a black, gay Republican Baptist, the very British way with a cup of tea.
Made my day.
Well, you made my year.
I'm so thrilled to actually see you in the flesh.
You are nice.
I even read your books.
Well, you're one of a glistening minority of discriminatory people.
16 years, I think I'm right in saying, after the Pilgrims hit Plymouth Rock, a Cambridge man founded a university here in this very place.
Good man, John Harvard.
Yes.
Now, I have to make one modest correction. He didn't found the place, but he did something far more important than founding it. He supported it. He gave it all of his books, half of his money, and the legislature gave it his name.
Ah, so it already existed?
It already existed, not very long, and it probably would have died in its cradle were it not for benefactions from John Harvard.
America often strikes me as entirely a land of contradictions. Almost anything you can say is true about it. The opposite's true as well. It's a land of the free and of a classless society, and yet it's ritzier in New York in certain places, and certainly in Newport, than it is anywhere in Britain, and there's more class consciousness.
Well, which is what I think makes it an interesting country, and a country that has a fascinating present, largely because it had to make up its past. It doesn't have this long, unbroken, romantic stretch to some primeval moment. So you make things happen. You know, another reason that you have these examples of conspicuous wealth is we can afford it.
Yeah.
We've still got it, for better or worse. People still aspire to enormous wealth. Money is not a bad thing. Puritans were not afraid of money at all.
Yes, Gore Vidal says that the Puritans didn't leave Britain and go to America so as to be free from persecution. They went so they could be free to persecute.
Well, there is, alas, more truth to that I would like to admit as a former president of the Pilgrim Society. But it is true that they did not come to the New World to set up some utopian, I'm okay, you're okay society. That was not at all what it was. They came up to set a just and righteous society, and that usually means that somebody's unjust and unrighteous.
And indeed, there were religious people all too ready to say that the reason for 9/11 was because there were gays and decadents in New York, and that was the reason. But you're not having any of that.
One of the many things one can say about this country is that we dislike complexity. So we will make simple solutions to everything that we possibly can, even when the complex answer is obviously the correct answer or the more intriguing answer. We want a simple yes or no, or a flat out this, or a absolutely certain that. Yeah. And the notion that God could have two thoughts simultaneously and people who dear to him who don't look or talk like us is just hard for many Americans to believe.
The persecution and intolerance that characterized the early days of the conquest of the New World were never more clearly seen than here in the town of Salem, on the outskirts of Boston. The witch trials of 1692 obsessed the colonies. Of the 150 women accused, 19 were eventually hanged. Today is Halloween, and modern Salem is awash with witches once more, some more serious than others. Laurie Cabot, the High Priestess of Salem, is a stout defender of their civil right to practice their religion.
Are you really a witch? Is Wiccan your religion? Is that the word for it?
Witchcraft is my religion. Wicca has become a colloquialism, meaning witchcraft, so people don't have to say the W word.
Right.
But it's witchcraft, yes. And it is a legal religion in America,
It's recognized.
It's recognized by the Constitution.
Right.
And protected, supposedly, hopefully.
Christianity wasn't kind to witchcraft or supposed witchcraft here in Salem, the most famous.
Right, that was not witchcraft. That was a Christian definition of the word witch, and then applied to people, that they wanted to get rid of, I think, or take their properties. But it was the wrong definition. Christianity still has the wrong definition of what witches are.
As we get ready for our circle.
Tonight is the opening of the both worlds, the world of our ancestors and our world.
And you don't call it Halloween, do you? What do you...
Oh, absolutely not.
What do you call it?
Samhain.
Samhain.
Samhain. It is a night, one of the most holy nights, because we're starting our new year. Summer is over, winter's starting. We're calling upon our ancestors' spirits to speak to us, to come and lend us their wisdom.
Right. So that's the connection with the dead rising, is it?
Exactly. The frosted air blows and changes summer to winter, and the wheel of the year turns once more. Blessing. Love you. Yes. Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Well, as a matter of fact, it's no longer Halloween. It's actually All Hallows Day, or if you're a witch, it's the beginning of a mad, merry new year. Or if you're a Stephen, it's bedtime.
This is Narragansett Bay, Rhode Island, and a little further down the coast is my next state, Connecticut. But somehow I seem to be helping crew the Weatherly, a 12-metre class yacht, which won the America's Cup back in 1962. This is sailing as it should be, and my crew, unlike me, have that fit confidence and blonde assurance that have inspired a million Ralph Lauren and Tommy Hilfiger commercials. Very American, very attractive, slightly too perfect. The crew are giving me a lift down the coast on my way to a different, but no less exciting type of boat. Groton in Connecticut is home to the US Navy Nuclear Submarine Force, the undersea guarantors of the deadly authority of the world's only superpower.
Lord, am I going down there? This is not me at my best.
And this, Stephen, is the control room. This is where we dive and drive the boat from. This guy steers the boat. The outboard station, or excuse me, yes, the outboard station over here is in charge of the stern planes.
So you really literally steer it in these seats with it, rather like kind of gaming arcade, sort of.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And is that what I think it is? Is that a periscope?
It is.
Oh, I say, I couldn't, could I? It's a long ambition of mine, the idea that I would one day, raising #1 periscope, up scope. Huh? Oh my God.
This is a little more old-fashioned than the #2's periscope.
Old-fashioned is good. Oh my, oh my. The zoom is fantastic. Oh, a kitchen. Oh my word. Oh, good. We're going to sit down and eat. So this, what do you call this, a mess or a...
Crew's mess, yeah.
Crew's mess.
It's where the crew eats. The officers have a separate messing area in the wardroom.
Right, they have a wardroom, yeah. Oh, it's a bit, yeah, they do get looked after a bit more. Did they get served?
They do get served, yeah.
But you've got 100 and how many mariners?
30.
130. So this obviously have to do it in staggered shifts.
Absolutely. 24 at a time.
Oh, I like that. And do you find women do fall on you like that if they've heard you volunteered today?
Well, I'm married, Stephen, so...
you wouldn't want that to happen, sorry. What's your average tour down submerged?
Between 6 and 8 months.
6 and 8 months? In this cramped environment with 130 other men and women, or just men?
Just men. We're pretty much the only submarine force left that hasn't incorporated women.
That's quite surprising. That's interesting. And is that just simply because there isn't room for the extra facilities and so on?
Correct, yeah. We'd have to have a different head or bathroom.
Yeah.
Loo, I guess you would say.
Yes, no, I think in the British Navy they say heads as well.
And different berthing areas, and we just don't have the facilities for that right now.
So 6 months, is that because after that people start going mad?
Actually, the only thing that limits how long we can be underway is the amount of food that we can carry. So 6 months is usually how long they'll keep us out, but we can stay out indefinitely if we can carry that much food.
Oh my goodness, are these the quarters? They look...
That's one of the 3 main berthing areas on the ship, or the boat as we call it.
Privacy is not a word that you're used to?
No, not at all. Yes.
This is a torpedo?
It is a torpedo. It's actually a fully functioning torpedo. The only exception is because it's painted orange, that means it's an exercise weapon, so it doesn't have explosive in it.
Okay. And this?
This is a Tomahawk missile.
Whoa, Tomahawk. So that's a really serious piece of weaponry?
It is.
That can travel how far?
Over 1,000 nautical miles and hit the area the size of a chalkboard.
This is Newport, Rhode Island.
This is the dead center of town. The dead center of town. These enormous houses, or cottages as the rich called them with rather knowing irony, I think, they were just here for the fresh air that Newport offers as opposed to the stifling humidity of New York in the summer months. So they were only lived in for a very short period of time. Now, they're mostly owned by the Preservation Trust that tries to keep them from falling down because the kind of multi-billionaires who live now don't want to live in this style. Amazing.
Otzi Charles is the doyenne of Newport's old money. She now lives in converted stables attached to one of these so-called cottages, a house that was once home to the celebrated novelist of Newport's heyday, Edith Wharton.
Can you tell me why they call them cottages and why they came here?
Snob appeal, I guess.
Yeah, they thought it was funny to build a huge mansion and call it a cottage.
I wasn't here there.
No, you weren't, but you know about the history. There's your drink. Don't forget that. So there is a very beautiful girl. Who would that be?
That's Mammy Whiting.
And who's the lovely girl on the right?
That's me.
That's you. I could recognize those cheekbones and that jawline.
We dressed every night for dinner. We went out practically every night. The houses were still fully staffed.
Mm.
And formally staffed. I mean, you know, footmen's...
In livery.
In livery. What's that word?
Livery. It sounds weird. In uniform, anyway.
Not weird.
You don't use livery? And so what kind of sizes of staff are we talking about back in the day when it was really the place?
I would think at a minimum 10 or 12.
Right. One of the people who lived here was the great novelist Edith Wharton, who was the chronicler, really, the nonpareil of the upper, what were they called? The upper...
Classes.
The upper classes. There was a number she had...
400.
The upper 400. Why were they called that?
Just the 400.
Just the 400. Why were they called the 400?
Because that's what Mrs. Astor's ballroom in New York could hold.
Oh, so if you were one of those, if you were important enough, and if you were 401, you were social outcast, ruin...
As we say in Alabama, tough titty.
Tough titty. And I suppose the best-known family, certainly in dynastic terms in America, to a Briton at least, must be the Kennedys.
Well, I went to the wedding.
Did you?
And it was too funny. Because, oh my, it was really so awful. All of them, Jackie's family, friends, were on this side. And we all looked just the way we did. Always in Newport, you were sort of slightly underdressed unless there was a big occasion.
Right.
And this was just Jackie getting married. And on this side were the Kennedys.
All in frock coats and...
I mean, they were dressed to the nines. And the difference between the two sides was simply fascinating.
So really the Kennedys tried a bit too hard to be into the old money.
They were just not part of...
No, because they were Boston Irish and they were Catholic, and above all, of course, he was a racketeer, wasn't he, Joe? Let's be honest, we can't deny that.
Attractive, though.
He was. Joe was attractive, was he? For all that he was a Nazi sympathiser and a criminal.
Oh, I mean, really horrible, but never mind.
Horrible but attractive. That's fair. People are. People are. Because I'm the other thing. I'm incredibly nice, but not very attractive.
A short ride and it's the Big Apple. I have a date with a fellow cabbie, John Mancuna, an Irish-American who lives in the predominantly Italian borough of Queens, but like most cabbies, plies his actual trade mainly in Manhattan.
Hello there.
Hey, Steve. Welcome
Hi.
to New York.
You must be John.
That's it.
Well, as I told you when I called you up, it'd be great if I could come to a cab garage to have my cab looked
Do you
at.
think you know where the dipstick is in this?
You do? Good luck. See if you can find it.
Is it here? Is it? Yes.
You see? You're right.
In your side.
Because usually the steering wheel is on this side, you see. What do you reckon?
You need some oil.
I do, don't I?
Yeah.
John, that's yours, is it?
Yes, that's mine, but
I like the flower.
think today we're going to go in the black taxi.
Yeah, I'm going to take you in a...
What's going on now in Manhattan is class cleansing. All neighborhoods, no matter what color, are being cleansed of poor people. Like Harlem, which was predominantly African-American now, that's all changing. The wealthier people are buying up the brownstones. The Lower East Side are moving out all the immigrants, and wealthier people are moving in. So all of Manhattan is just being cleansed of a lower and a middle class that are moving out to, say, Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx. So that's what's going on.
I noticed with cab drivers that a huge number from Ukraine, from India, Bangladesh, and all kinds of countries. It's quite rare now to get one who seems to have been born in New York.
Yeah, there's 60,000 drivers. 10% would be native born. The yellow cab now is worth $600,000, and that's called the medallion that you would buy for the yellow cab.
Oh,
so it's a huge investment, whoever wants to buy one.
Do you get used to seeing people on the street and telling from their body posture?
Yes.
And then you just drive
their
on?
Dress.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like a lot of these guys like to dress like gangsters. They'll have the hood over their head, the pants hanging around their ass, right?
Yeah.
And the baseball cap sideways. Well, I say, if you're going to look like a gangster, act like a gangster, I'm going to pass you up like a gangster. You know, after an 11-hour shift, you're at a light, it's 3 in the morning, and you hear both doors open and guys jump in. And they go, yo, my man, we're heading up to the South Bronx. And like the hair in the back of the head. Oh, not at this hour. You run them up, and then at first you're saying, oh, God, please don't rob me. Then as you get closer, you say, all right, you don't even have to tip me, just pay me. Then as you see the neighborhood, you say, listen, just jump, please. just go. I'll take the loss. I don't really care. And someone was asking me about, what are the benefits? What's your retirement plan like? I said, my retirement plan is 4:30 in the morning, a 9mm to the back of the head in the South Bronx. I said, that's when I've retired.
The Big Apple, of course, is not just the Isle of Manhattan. I'm keen to explore the other boroughs and the people that make up the quintessential New York City. So John is taking me to a rather special place in the Italian neighborhood of Queens to meet one such tribe, the Goodfellas, the petty and not-so-petty types made famous in The Godfather and The Sopranos. This is their social club.
So this is it, eh?
This is it. You might get in. I don't know if you're going to get out.
Hi there.
There's tea, coffee, cake, soda in the refrigerator.
Fantastic.
Help yourself.
Well, hello, gentlemen.
Oh.
I'm,
Hey, yo, hey.
I'm Stephen.
Hey, yo.
You are?
Rick.
Rick?
Stephen, that's Larry.
Larry, hi.
Joe. And Joseph.
Joe.
David.
David.
Ryan, pleasure to know Mikey.
There had to be a Mikey.
Hey, let's
see the Mikey. Hey, Mikey. Well, what a place. I've always dreamt of being in one of these. You seem to be pretty keen on your sports.
Yeah.
We got racing, we got football, we got a whole wall of New York Yankees.
Every Yankee World Series team.
Wow. Tell me something I've always wanted to know. There's a thing you get in movies, right, in which people are described as running numbers. What does that mean?
They have the racetrack.
Yeah.
And they have how much money is bet on a racetrack.
Or the whole total?
The whole total. And it's got racetrack total.
Yeah.
And the last three numbers, if you're lucky enough to play it, you'll win some money.
Oh, so you predict how
Right.
much in the course of the whole afternoon at the racetrack?
Let's say you wanted to play your birthday and it was 410.
Yeah.
You put $1 on 410. Next day you look at the paper, at the end of the racing, track total handle.
So it could be anything from 000 to 0 to 999. So what are the ways to get an edge on anybody? To get an edge on a bookie or to get an edge on
Listen, it's real hard today
It's
to
hard.
get an edge.
It's so
Listen, we wouldn't be sitting in this club if they knew how to do that, all right?
How you will get an edge.
Yeah.
See this phone?
Yeah.
You're in here with a bookmaker.
Yeah.
I'm out the racetrack.
Right.
The horse is going to right over the finishing line.
Yeah.
He's number 8. I press number 8 on here. You got your cell phone.
Yeah.
Your cell phone will ring. The first number will be 8. That's the winner of the race. Now you're talking to the bookmaker. You say, "Excuse me, I got to answer the phone." You see number 8. You make a little conversation. All right, I'll talk to you later. I'm
Give me
busy.
8.
Give me number 8, and you got the winner.
Who's going to tell me why there's a bullet hole on the door here?
The bullet hole was a Friday. We had a card game.
And
Somebody
shot at the
parked
club.
their car, and they shot 6 bullets into the.
You see the one on the wall over there? See next to Jeter? There's a hole. That ain't a mouse hole. That's a bullet hole.
Oh my!
See it?
Yeah.
One went through and hit one of the players and missed his head. It grazed his forehead.
Another one back here.
That went all the way through. Whoa!
And when he said my friend got grazed in his head, he called an ambulance. He says, "I'm shot in the head." So the ambulance driver says, the person over the phone says, "How do you know?" He says, "There's a hole in my head and blood's coming out. How do you think I know I got shot?"
So what's your nickname?
Big Time.
Why are you called Big Time?
Because I've done some movies. I've been in about 300 movies. I'm always playing a gangster in the movies.
Yeah.
I knew the part De Niro played in that movie in Goodfellas.
Yeah?
Yeah, I knew the guy he played. He played, well, the guy's name was Jimmy the Gent.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I knew the real Jimmy the Gent. And I told De Niro, when he went to go visit him in jail to ask him questions, De Niro says, "Listen, this movie ain't gonna help my parole," he told De Niro, "so take a walk." and I told him the exact phrase, I don't want to mention it,
Yeah.
but the exact phrase how he told him. So De Niro turned around and says, "Mink, you really knew the guy." I said, "Listen."
Yeah.
And that's how I became friends with De Niro.
Wow. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, Hannah. Nice to see you.
Oh, well.
Goodbye. Nice to see you all. God bless you.
And next time we'll give you Bulletproof Press when you come in.
Before I head off to New Jersey, I have a quick fare to pick up in the shape of a more recent immigrant to the city.
I don't drink coffee, I take tea, my dear. I like my toast on one side.
Taxi! I've always loved it here.
Yeah.
I mean, the British here are pretty invisible. We don't look like a community. The only place you'll find us in numbers is maybe one of the pubs downtown.
If there's a football going on.
Saturday morning.
Yes. You are now Englishman in New York, of course. That's your...
One of the favourite songs I play here. It was also adopted by Jamaicans. There was a Jamaican in New York song, a Croatian in, everyone's done their own version of it, which I don't mind. I get paid.
Of course. So people just change the one word in it and do a cover version. Oh, that's wonderful. A Bosnian Herzegovinian.
It doesn't quite scan, Stephen.
This is why I'm not in your
to the
business.
acting.
Oh, thank you.
Let us make a friend, as someone said. He's our hero of the
Down the coast from New York in the state of New Jersey, Atlantic City's boardwalk was between the wars the playground of America, the queen of resorts. After flatlining in the 70s, it's reinvented itself as the gambling capital of the eastern
Thank you very
seaboard.
much. I'll be very smart, won't I? Splendid. Let's play cards.
I am to be initiated into the charmed circle of washers and dealers on the blackjack table. by a representative of one of the latest waves of immigrants, Vietnamese croupier Kelly.
You put them in there? Oh, I see.
And take out.
No, take the whole lot out. I see. It's just a way of squaring them off. Now they've got to go in here.
No.
Oh, more.
And wash.
And now we just
wash.
Grab a few, square them off.
Way to you.
Oh, to eat, so they don't see the.
Way to you, yeah.
Yeah, facing me, so they don't see the. And then back in here. So now they go in the shoe.
No,
you
shuffle.
wait for the.
Shuffle.
Shuffle again? But we just shuffled them.
No, that's the wash.
That's the wash.
Yeah.
Now we shuffle.
Now shuffle.
Oh my! So like. No.
Cut in half. Make sure you.
Right, two halves. Like so.
And then now
and now
got another one.
Into 2 packs.
Yeah.
Like so. Oh my. Well, you're very good. So.
No, you pick one piece so that both of them. A shuffle.
Like that? And then like
yeah,
that?
a little bit, yeah.
Of course. What a fool I am. There we go. 11, sir. Do you want to double up? I imagine you would. It's a good situation. Oh, you take it? Sorry, that's a card. So. Oh, yes!
No, oh, yes, what? Do it for you one. Don't say, oh, yes.
Sorry. So do you reckon in your gambling and your gaming, any of you have made a profit? Yes. You do well?
A lot. A fortune.
A fortune?
I built a house on it.
Really? On this game?
Absolutely.
I'm surprised if they put a small plaque up there to commemorate that. That's wonderful.
You're so fabulous. This is a great personality. You're so
Right. One more? Ready?
Nobody-
What's the biggest amount you've seen someone win?
Like a couple million.
Couple of million. And lose the same?
Lose same. You know.
Amazing, isn't it? And so it's a good living to be a croupier? It's a desirable job, you think? Is there a lot of people who want to be a croupier? You have a lot of demand, a lot of people come to the school.
Yeah.
And what about tips? What's the biggest tip you've been given? Well, might you get a 5,000 chip?
Yeah.
You really might, as a tip? Wow.
Gambling's on the increase in America as more and more states, realizing how much revenue can be gained, license more and more legal casinos. And while I have nothing against gambling per se, the effects are truly devastating. Many have been ruined by their addiction, easily as toxic as any drug. In the end, the house always wins. It's irrefutable arithmetic. And as embodied in these trashy, tawdry palaces, I personally find the whole business vulgar, tasteless, and desperately sad. But maybe that's just me.
Well, we're crossing the Delaware River, which takes us from New Jersey to the state of Delaware. And it was here on Christmas Day, 1776, that George Washington sneakily crossed with his Continental Army and delivered a massive defeat to the British Allies, the Battle of Trenton. He did it in midwinter. God knows what it must have been like. There's a very famous painting, actually, which I have here, of that very scene, Washington crossing the Delaware. It's entered into American myth and legend as one of the turning points in their history. God, it must have been cold. Delaware. What can we say about Delaware? Well, Delawareans will tell you proudly that theirs was the first state to be incorporated into the Union. So it's important for that reason. But there's a certain generation, my mother included, who would first associate it with a Perry Como song. What did Delaware, boys, what did Delaware? She wore a brand new jersey. Why did California? Why did Cali phone? She phoned to say Hawaii.
Oh, why did California? Why did California?
From Delaware, I've crossed into Maryland and over the Chesapeake Bay, and yes, I know I'm shortchanging these charming states, but I have a rendezvous to keep in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Not strictly a state at all, but merely a district. It's an attractive mix of imposing architecture, nationalistic symbols, broad boulevards, the 19th century grandeur of Lincoln's Memorial, the White House and Capitol Hill. It feels more European, a product of the Enlightenment, fit to stand alongside Berlin, St. Petersburg, and Paris. I'm meeting up with the newest purveyor of the Enlightenment, a modern-day Diderot, Jimmy Wales, who's the founder of the most compendious encyclopedia ever, Wikipedia.
How many people work for Wikipedia?
10 people worldwide.
Good.
Just 10. And we're the number 8 website on the internet now. So, and those 10 are, other than the one guy who's the community liaison, pretty much don't edit Wikipedia at all. They're tasked with keeping the servers running and answering the phones and dealing with the press and things like that.
So the rest of the entries are not just the entries, but the checking of other things, the checking of alterations, the acceptance or denial of little extras, all that is done by volunteers.
Volunteers, yeah. Yeah, just the main community members, the really active people, the administrators, all volunteers, and just working in their spare time.
So unlike Google, which is probably the best known and certainly probably at the moment $700 a share or something.
Well, we're actually a charity. We're a non-profit organization.
So you haven't, I'm not talking to one of the famous .com billionaires.
Oh gosh, no.
How extraordinary that you should create something that is so well known, is used by so many people, and still have not polluted it with adverts and things like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, Wikipedia is something, I think it's something that can be really special. And I think the core community is guided by that idea. So whatever criticisms we receive, well, we take it very seriously because we want to be good. And I think when people look back on the early days of the internet, which this still is very much the early days of the internet, 200 years from now, 500 years from now, they'll say, that was something that was good. There was spam and there was pop-up ads and nonsense on the internet, but this is something we remember that was worth doing. To me, that as an American, it is a bit of pride in that respect, that especially in this era when America has a very bad reputation around the world in many ways and for many reasons. But what's interesting about American culture is that there is still some very strong old values that really are, to me, very good and inspirational. And so it's things, freedom of speech and the idea that ordinary people can come together and build something, and ideas about sort of a can-do spirit.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. Thank you for that warm welcome. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm George W. Bush, President of the United States. But on a more serious note,
DC is truly a company town. That the company happens to be the US government makes it all the more interesting. Venality, corruption, incompetence, lying, cheating, philandering, filibustering, gerrymandering are all words that come to mind here. Luckily, the Fourth Amendment guarantees free speech. Luckily, that is, for satirical groups like Capitol Steps.
Work with me, people, okay? Thank you.
Barry Byrne, like most of the Capitol Steps troupe, started off in a government job on the Hill, but then turned from gamekeeper to poacher.
Is this the source of most of your material then?
This is the source of much of our material. The rest of it comes from, of course, the White House.
now recently I spoke to you from my library where I admitted that we had made mistakes in the handling of the war in Iraq. Many people were shocked to see me in a library.
I noticed on the program that, well, politicians seem to like you.
They were also very critical of myself and the NSA for wiretapping American citizens.
They feel like any publicity is good publicity.
But I don't understand what all the fuss is about. I mean, for years, I have been criticized for not listening to the American people.
It's comedy gold. It's comedy gold.
Three little Kurds to one formation of a Kurdish sovereign nation where we'll be free for emulation. Three little Kurds from school. Three little Kurds from school. My name's Khalaf, that's a palindrome. I stopped drinking when out alone because of the war.
Politics is the main industry here. Politics and businesses around it seem to feed into that. Lobbyists, for example, there are a lot of associations are headquartered here. it's amazing how it is a self-perpetuating business that each administration will come with its own problems, and we'll be sitting right there waiting to jump on them.
Many great men and women have filed in and out of this Willard Hotel, but none greater and certainly none more revered than Abraham Lincoln, who actually lived here at the Willard in the period between his election and his inauguration into the White House. And I suppose Lincoln is best known and remembered for a certain speech he made on a battlefield in Pennsylvania. Did you make this great address over the bodies of the slain, sort of a day after the battle?
No, the graves, there still were places where people would be buried. There were caskets.
80 miles to the west of the capital, the serenity of Gettysburg today belies the savagery of the battle that was fought here over 3 days in July 1863. The Union victory was the turning point in the Civil War against the Confederates of the South. On November the 19th that year, President Lincoln came to the battlefield to dedicate this cemetery to the nation and deliver what has become the most famous speech in American history.
Well, I was asked to make a few appropriate remarks. They told me I was not to be the main speaker. Edward Everett.
Jim Getty, a perfect Aber-like, has been working the Heritage Trail for nearly half a century.
Well, I wanted to go back to where we had started 87 years ago in Philadelphia. 47 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation can want anything, so that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
The 270 words of Lincoln's address that lasted barely 2 minutes have entered popular culture because they so concisely and eloquently summed up the high ideals of what the Union hoped the Republic would become after the war was won. Standing here on the blood-soaked battlefield of Gettysburg, one can't help but be put in mind of the extraordinary earthquake-like fissure that opened up between the Yankee North and that romantic, mysterious, eccentric, bewitching part of America that they still call the Deep South. On the next leg of my journey, I shall be visiting coal mines and distilleries, body farms and cotton farms, snowbirds and parole boards, guitar pickers and turkey stuffers, discovering how much or how little since that bloody Civil War the Deep South has changed.
BBC Radio 4 continues its major series on America with a look at the growth of democracy and political parties in Empire of Liberty tomorrow afternoon at 3:45. Well, back here on BBC One, the story of the guitar turns electric at 10:20 after the news.